So 9310, real quick. As this kind of pertains to our topic a little bit, talking about Utah State. But 9310 saying the rotation seems to be firmed up. Do you think the deep bench gets more run once we lock up the 1 seed? Well, you might not lock up the 1 seed until the last game of the season.
Well, the short answer to that is
Sort of short answer is no.
No. Even if you have the 1 seed locked up in the conference, they're not playing just for the 1 seed.
Yeah,
they're playing for a 6 seed.
Yeah, this isn't
or a 5 seed.
This isn't the NFL or the NBA or the pro leagues where once you lock up your division or whatnot or seeding for, in that postseason, you can start resting guys. In college sports, especially college basketball, where the regular season still reigns supreme for the most part, conference tournaments obviously kind of throw a bit of a wrench in the value of the regular season, but that has more to do with low major schools, 1-bid leagues. For Utah State, they can't afford to let up for a second because, if they like the idea of a 6 seed, I think that's probably not going to quite be in the realm of possibility unless they win out incredibly impressively. That's not to say Utah State may not deserve one or may not have the metrics to have a 6 seed, but I've made it clear over and over, I don't trust the selection committee to actually put the Aggies anywhere above an 8 seed. That's just pessimism on my part there. But Utah State can't really afford to loosen its rotation because if you loosen the rotation, that can lead to either losses or less impressive wins.
Yeah, a game in which you were supposed to win by 10, you only end up winning by 6.
Yeah, so Utah State can't afford to let up off the gas pedal.
As good.
Yeah, and you got a 9-man rotation. It's not like the Aggies are thin. They've got a 9-man rotation where they can lean on the bench a little bit more if they need to. MJ Collins and Mason Falstaff don't have to play 37, 38 minutes. They might on any given night, but they're not having to do that night in and night out. They can play 30 minutes, 32, 34. They're both averaging, MJ is barely above 30 minutes per game. Mason's barely above 31. So Utah State's depth is fine where it's at, and they don't necessarily need to expand it and then risk letting off the gas.
Yeah, I mean, in a game against a top 60 team in the net, Utah State starters, like star guys, like only one guy played more than 30 minutes. And that was Mason, who played 31. So, the defense was on point. The game was it was just an awesome game for Utah State. But it's not like you need to rest or let off the gas. But if you have games like this where you don't have to lean in on your starters so much, that was the problem with last year's team. Like the starters, they got leaned on a lot, and then they ran out of gas end of the season and in the conference tournament. You could see it. Coach may have not have wanted to admit it, but it was plain as day. So far this year, they're not having to do that. They've had a stretch here where I'd have to go look, game by game and player by player, but it just seems a little bit unusual right now for the last little bit that anybody for Utah State's playing more than 34 minutes, 35 minutes per game.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. Mason's done a couple of 37-minute games. So he's pretty much the only one who's gone over 35 with any sort of consistency. I'm not sure MJ's actually done more than 35 minutes, if at all, this season. Mason's pretty much the only one who comes close to those, 40-minute, spend every, and even then, nobody's done that. Nobody's spent the entire game on the court for the Aggies, where a lot of other teams in the Mountain West have had it happen at least once. Some guys are doing it almost every night.
Yeah.
I know Jake Heidbreder's basically playing 38. He basically gets 2 stints on the bench for 1 minute each. And wherever they come, that's the only rest he gets. So more text on the text line. Still talking about the rotation, so we'll keep talking about that before we go deep into the Boise State game. 2305, or actually I'm going to read this one from 9315 really quick just because it was on the rotation. Although first saying, name of the game last night, and defense and also a gif of a North Dakota State volleyball player. So
Okay.
fitting, I guess, for the Mountain West.
Defense.
But defense was certainly the name of the game. And then asking, how deep does the rotation need to be? I thought USC was already a deep team that goes deep in rotation most games. Yeah, Utah State is a deep team. They're not the deepest because, like, you'll have your, like, ultra thin teams. And this is more like when you get into tournament play where you shrink your rotation. But, like, seven rotation players is about as thin as you are going to get. And, again, that tends to just be postseason play. You have to have your best of the best. And you're going all out. You can't afford to take your best players off the court.
Who can you trust most in tight situations?
Yeah. Eight is going to be a either slightly shrunk rotation or like you're going to have 8 players you trust, and then you might have a 9th that you put in every now and again. If you're a 9 rotation team, you have decent depth. If you're comfortable playing all 9 of those players in every game, and I think the Aggies are there, where probably the one player that's kind of iffy and whether or not he'll play, but even then he's playing every game and is playing better of late. Heck, he's played every game. That's Gary Clark, and he's averaging like 16 minutes. I guess maybe Zach Keller. I don't know if he counts because he plays 12 minutes a game, but he's playing a little bit more of late. So the Aggies are pretty comfortably going 9 players deep.
Yeah.
At 12 to 15 minutes a game, depending on how well that person is playing. At least those on the back end of the rotation. Then you can get into some teams that can go like 10 or 11 or 12, and like that's where you're like really deep. But with the Aggies having players like Mason Falstad and MJ Collins, it's hard for them to justify going, Jordy Barnes could play a little bit more. Tucker Anderson could play a little bit more. At one point, Tucker was averaging 10, 11 minutes per game. Then he kind of fell out of the rotation. A lot of that had to do with the fact that Coach Calhoun couldn't afford to take minutes away from Adlan Elamine. And he's playing like 20 minutes a game. And Drake Allen, like you have players like Drake and Adlan Elamine and, who could play like 28, 29 minutes a game. Colby King plays 19. He could play 28 minutes per game for a Mountain West team. And these guys are playing like 20 minutes a game. So they've got 9 solid players. And Coach Calhoun has kind of mentioned this. They have legitimately 9 players who could be starters for a decent chunk of the Mountain West.
Oh, Air Force and San Jose would love a piece of Utah State's bench.
Every one of Utah State's top 9 players would start for Air Force or San Jose. A decent chunk of them would be starting for Fresno and Wyoming and whatnot. So Utah State has 9 players that divide the minutes up evenly enough that it can sometimes be the equivalent of playing 10 or 11 guys.
Yeah, so I look, I don't know that they need to go deeper. I think that they're 8, 9, usually 9 players that play. It just depends on how Gary Clark's doing, if he's in the doghouse or not. If he's on, then he's going to play and he'll get back on the court if he commits a foul. But that really seems to be the only kind of swing guy who plays. So it's an 8 to really 9 player rotation that Utah State has. And last year, they probably had 8, but it really only felt like 7. And so you're not leaning in on some of your starters so hard that they just don't have gas in the tank. I don't know that I'd say that Utah State has found its rotation. Like it's been this rotation for a while.
Yeah, well, I think they've found their rotation over the last 8 or 9 games where they've been starting, when Zach Keller stepped into the lineup kind of full time. Mind you, it's been like a dozen plus games, but again, they've gone from having Tucker Anderson in the lineup and even Jordy Barnes for half a minute in the lineup to, they've found 9 guys that this is who they've been for pretty much all of conference play.
Yeah.
So it's not changing at this point.